Chapter 9. What is the perseverance of the saints? I looked forward to the next Friday, obviously for two reasons: the discussion with Dr. Sisk and the date with Terry. Friday would be a good day. Or so it appeared. I wasn't ready for what took place on Friday morning. I don't suppose there is any way one could get ready for such an event. I was called from one of my classes and told to call the chairman of my deacons at the church. He informed me that the evening before one of our choice and most committed young men had been killed in an automobile accident. The boy who was killed was just 18 years old and was looking forward to graduation from high school in June. He had been hit by a drunk driver on his way home from a school basketball game that night before. The family wanted me to come immediately. As I ministered to the boy's family and the church family that weekend, and as I preached the funeral, my first one, and what a tough one it was for a first one, I kept wondering about the Calvinist view that God had decreed all things. Had he, or even could he have decreed this? If he had, how could he have? If he hadn't, did something happen outside of his will? Had Satan produced something God could not have stopped? That thought was frightening. Or did something happen which God could have stopped, but he didn't for reasons beyond us? Either way, the explanations were not without difficulty. On Sunday, the Lord seemed to use this event to deepen the spirit of revival developing in the church. Many committed their lives afresh to the Lord, and several young people even made professions of faith. Though I wanted the Lord to have his way, I was also careful not to do anything to produce false decisions, which would be made only in light of the events of the previous week without serious thought and understanding. These decisions, however, in the weeks that followed, did prove to be of the Lord. One other positive came out of this weekend. Terry came to the funeral service, and I was able to introduce her to my congregation after the sermon. She was a great encouragement to me as I sought to minister the word. The unexpected events of that week and weekend forced me to postpone the scheduled meeting Friday with Dr. Sisk. We rescheduled it for the following Tuesday. Honestly, I was glad we had just one more meeting on the Calvinist acrostic. I knew it would be several weeks, even a month or so, before another meeting because I would need time for further research as I tackled the next step. Finally, as I entered Dr. Sisk's office, I was still operating from the study and reading done over the Christmas holidays. I began the discussion with an attempt to define the Calvinistic doctrine of the perseverance of the saints. I said, like the other points of Calvinist acrostic, the doctrine of perseverance stems from and is the logical conclusion from the other previous points. If the other points are true, then so is perseverance, so says the Calvinist. I paused to get Dr. Sisk's reaction. Elaborate on that, he almost demanded. Well, if man is totally depraved and cannot do anything to help himself spiritually, and if God is absolutely sovereign in the matter of election, choosing the elect on the basis of his will and his will alone, and if Christ's death was for the elect, guaranteeing their salvation, and if God calls the elect irresistibly, then does it not follow that God will assure the final salvation of these elect? That is, they will persevere to the final end? Dr. Sisk nodded his usual agreement with my definition. He laughed and, taunting me, humorously suggested, Say that again? I told him I probably couldn't say it again in the same way, but let me say it in another way. If the elect do not persevere, then the eternal election of God would fail, and this the Calvinist could not admit. If God decreed it, it will come to pass, including the final salvation of the elect. Or again, I suggested, if the elect do not persevere, then the death of Christ could be a failure because its design was to guarantee the salvation of the elect. Or even further, I concluded, if the elect do not persevere, then the grace of God would be resistible by the saved. They could reject God's grace in a final manner after they are saved, even though grace was resistible before they were saved. You've said a lot, Dr. Sisk admitted, and it's the Calvinist position. But you haven't defined the doctrine yet. Apologetically, I offered a definition. Perseverance is the doctrine which says that those who are the elect, because they have been the object of God's eternal decree of election, and because they have been the object of Christ's atonement, shall continue in the way of salvation, as the same power of God that saved them will also keep and sanctify them unto their final salvation. Does this rule out backsliding? Dr. Sisk asked. No, it doesn't, but it rules out the possibility that one can profess to be a Christian and yet live in a supposed backslidden state for a number of years without facing the chastening hand of God. Backsliding will occur among Christians, but the doctrine of perseverance says that the true believer will not remain there endlessly. If he does, he had better put a big question mark beside his profession of faith.
What does this doctrine do to the carnal Christian idea?
Dr. Sisk asked. What's a carnal Christian? I asked. I'd never heard of the term. Dr. Sisk came to my aid.
A carnal Christian, according to some, is one who has been truly saved, yet lives like he is lost. He has made a profession of faith, and maybe lived like a Christian for a while, but now he has gone back to the world, and both those around him in the world and those of the church wouldn't know he was a Christian. Only God knows his heart. He may spend the rest of his life in the condition, but because of his salvation experience, he will be in eternity with Christ. He is carnal, but he is Christian. Or he's Christian, but he is carnal.
Well, I don't think the Calvinist would like that viewpoint, I declared. The Calvinist would say, if there is no perseverance, there is no salvation. And if there is true salvation, there will be perseverance.
One more question, Dr. Sisk said, before I let you speak further about perseverance. Is this the same as the usual Baptist definition of once saved, always saved?
I had never thought of that. Immediately I saw it was not so. I countered, the Baptist concept of once saved, always saved is only half of the coin. And with only half of the coin, it seems to me it can become a dangerous doctrine. Dr. Sisk said nothing, but his face said, elaborate. So I continued. The doctrine of perseverance, according to the Calvinist, has two sides, security and perseverance. Yet one cannot exist without the other. The Baptist doctrine of eternal security, once saved, always saved, overlooks and neglects the necessity of perseverance as the proof of true salvation. Thus, by telling a person of eternal security without telling him of the reality of perseverance as the proof of salvation, one could produce the same results as the carnal Christian doctrine. People who think that they are saved but who are not. The doctrine of eternal security, without the other side of the coin, becomes a license to sin for those who have merely professed faith in Christ, but who have never truly been saved. The Calvinist doctrine of perseverance gives both comfort to the believer, he is eternal secure, and reality to his profession. He realizes the proof of his salvation is the perseverance in the Christian life. When Dr. Sisk asked me for questions I would address to the Calvinist at this point, I honestly told him I didn't have any. Though I was still wrestling with the first 4 points, this one made sense, and seemed to be thoroughly scriptural. After a few more comments, I told him I would need more time to study before we could meet again. With the schoolwork and the church, I wasn't sure when that would be possible.